In this video, I'm going to show you how to airbrush this rose using a template by Airshot Stencils. Let's get into the tutorial right now. So the first thing I want to do is position my template on the aluminium composite panel. So what I've done to prepare this is basically remove the protective film, and then on the glossy side I've just used a grey Scotch pad and I've just sanded that just so that the paint can stick to the base. So just using our template, line it up where you want your rose, and then I'm just going to use some tape and stick that into place, and just going to mask up around it just to protect the background from overspray. Make sure to cover all the areas. Okay, so now that the background's protected, I can begin with my first color, and I'm going to start off with red. And I'm just going to spray. I'm angling the airbrush directly onto the template so that it helps to press the template down as I'm spraying. Just building it up, so not going too heavy too quick. You are going to get a bit of overspray, but that's fine. I'm going to bring my other tones on top of that. I just want to show you an easy way of rendering this particular rose. So I just dropped my pressure a little bit, so I'm probably spraying now at around 20 psi, and that's just helping to keep the template into place but not blow it around too much. So I'm just working back over some of those areas from the base color. Now I'm using a mid-green and just going to spray the mid-green on the leaves. Again, I'm not trying to saturate the surface, just build it up, take your time, try and contain your overspray. If you're not comfortable doing it like this, where I'm spraying freehand through this template, meaning that the sections haven't been masked off individually, then you can definitely do that. You could also use the template outline and then cut yourself a negative template by using that outline, cutting right around the entire image, removing that positive section, and then you're going to have a complete base of the entire rose artwork, and then you can just divide up each section. That way you'll also get a flat tone right through, so you'd have this part of the rose completely flat toned in red. Then you could lay these out and then shade on top of that. I'm going to show you a different way of doing it just so that you can easily follow along. Over these areas a bit too. Now our green is going to blend a bit with that red, but I can shade back over some of those areas to blend that back in, so I'm not too concerned if it tints it a little bit. Now I'm coming in with a sepia brown, make sure it's flowing nicely, and I'm just going to come in and do the stem. Get a couple of these grungy bits in there as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and unmask it. Lift that up, you can see what we're left with. Just give you a quick close-up of where we're at after spraying through the template, and now we're going to add some freehand airbrushing to it to further render it. Okay, so you can see here I've got obviously these extreme highlights happening now because we're working on a white base, and these parts were masked up by the stencil. So what I want to do is just carefully dust over them with the corresponding color. So I don't want to go too heavy. I just want to tone those white areas down and put a bit of a red base on it, but I don't want to lose those markings from our stencil. I want to still be able to see them because I'm going to bring some darker shading in there to shape the rose, and they're the guidelines that I'm going to use. Just be careful that you don't get too much overspray. I mean, you can see I've got a little bit of overspray, but I'm not too concerned about it. I can clean that up a little bit at the end. So just get enough on there until you can still see it, and any bits that you've gone too light, you can come back over those as well. Now doing the same with the mid-green. Again, I'm not too concerned that it's a little bit patchy because I'm going to bring in some shading over the top, so that'll disappear as you work throughout the artwork. What I want to do now is, using my sepia brown, just fix up some of these areas here and also blend them in to the leaves. If this is the first time watching one of our videos, then welcome. For all of our regular viewers, welcome back. I do hope that you're enjoying this video tutorial so far. If you are, give it a thumbs up, share it out, and let's build this airbrushing community together. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing, tap on that bell icon, and that's going to notify you every time I put out new content. And while I've got that sepia, I'll just come in and shade some of those areas. To darken off and add a bit of shading to those leaves. Just hitting those edges. I'm not being super accurate with them, just up nice and close to get a nice fine line, a real defined shadow, and then moving along just the edge and being a bit more suggestive with it, not just outlining it. I don't want it to look like a cartoon. Add in a few more twigs and just extend them out. Now I'm going to use some red violet to shade over the red section of the rose. So we're going to start the rendering process here at the top. And using the markings from the template, I can follow along with those and then just render out from there. If you're enjoying this tutorial and you want to learn more about airbrushing, why not take a look at our online airbrushing course at airbrushassylum.thinkific.com. I'll pop a link in the description below as well. So you can see I'm essentially sketching with this red violet and just following the template markings up nice and close, and then establishing where I want to go with it, and then gradually coming back a bit further and dusting out just to blend out my shadow. And what I'm going to do is continue and follow along all those markings and then do some freehand as well on top of that. If you prefer, you can also get yourself a reference, just do a Google search and get a similar rose and then follow along with the rendering according to that. I'm trying to be a little bit more accurate to the stencil so that if you do purchase the stencil, you can follow along with this tutorial. So just for a little bit more contrast, I'm just using a torn bit of copy paper. It's just regular paper, and I'm just going to line that up against my edge where my shading is. Just really pop out some of those areas. You can see how nice and crisp that makes it. So remember to always mask off the lighter area. So wherever you want the shadow, that's where you would hold the paper. So in this case, the shadow is running on that inside edge. So I'm going to line it up like so and spray in there. So you don't need much, just gives it a bit more effect. You can actually create a whole rose just using the paper template technique. I'll show you that in another tutorial that I do have on this channel. I'll link up to that in the description below. Now I'll come in and just do a bit more freehand. Hit some of these edges. Again, don't need to be super perfect with them. Using sepia, I want to work a bit of this darker shading back into it, just to give it a bit more contrast. Pick up on the edges, again can be nice and uneven. We're not going for a perfect looking rose, it's more of a stylized look, less at the top where the highlighted area should be. So I'm missing a lot of those sections. What I want to do now is come back in with the paper template again and just resharpen up some of those edges using that sepia. That's going to help to make it pop. The idea though is not to go over everything again, so we only want to hit those darker spots and then blending back into our previous tone, which was the red violet. Just do some freehand blending as well so it all merges in. Don't need much, really want to pick out some of those key areas just to further define the artwork. Now I'm going to use some dark green to further shade the leaves. A flesh tone mixed with white. What I'm going to do with this tone is just come in and hit some highlights on the stem. It's going to look pretty bright, but it is mixed up, so it's not as bright as a white would be. Run a little bit in the leaves as well. I'm not going to do anything to the background, just going to leave it as is. So this border has been pretty much pointless, but I quite like the white background nice and clean, so I'm going to leave it as is. Just unmask this, and what I might do is just bring that stem down a little bit. Going to freehand this down. Just for a little added effect, we'll just add a couple of thorns in there. To continue your learning, be sure to check out some of the other videos and playlists that I've got listed here. And until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and I'll see you again very, very soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.